I wanted to talk this week about curb appeal and landscaping, just because it's something that I think investors who are doing renovations, it's always kind of an afterthought. I think it's something that people leave till the end. Oh, if I have any money left over, we'll put something in, or, it's kind of like the last thing they think about because it's more fun to, pick tile out and renovate bathrooms and things. But I think it's really something that needs to have a line item in your budget, and you need to really focus on. So, the reason that I made this presentation for today is that I had an experience last month where I was representing a buyer buying a flip home, and it appraised really, really, really low. It really surprised all of us how low it appraised, and we tried to fight it. You normally aren't going to win that fight with an appraiser, but we asked him to justify his position, and we said, here's, you pulled these comps. We think these comps are more accurate, and he said that the curb appeal and the landscaping and paint and things were the difference for him. So that appraisal came in 20,000 low because he wouldn't use the comps from close by because he thought the house had not been, raised to the same value as the ones that had nicer landscaping and front yards. So I think it's something, it doesn't necessarily have to cost you a lot of money, but definitely don't leave it as an afterthought because it can really, if you're doing a burr or you're doing a flip, that's really going to kill you to get a low appraisal. And then, of course, longer days on market just because your pictures don't look as good as other homes that have, that nice curb appeal. You have less interest in the home. Now, so today I'm talking to like regular sellers, flippers, and landlords who are renting out their home. All three need to be concerned about curb appeal. Of course, if you're renting out, you don't need to go as big, right? I'm not saying that you need to make this luxurious yard for your renters because that's not the case, but you want to make sure that the front of the house at least looks decent, or you're not going to get good tenants who want to see it. And then the unhappy neighbors, when we buy a property, like the first thing we do is go in and rake leaves and mow and, get trash out of the yard, pressure wash, we just kind of clean up the place, because right away then all of the neighbors will come out and talk to you like, oh, thank you, that's been an eyesore for so long. They will tell you everything about the house you need to know. You'll get so much information that you do actually need. And they'll, kind of starts like, oh, they're flipping that house. It gets you some like free publicity, I guess, just for a really simple, almost free thing. I mean, even if you paid a lawn guy to do it, you're talking like $50 or something. Okay, so here are the different areas of, when I say like curb appeal, kind of what I'm talking about. Here are the different line items for your budget there. And we're going to kind of go through one by one. And, I said budget money, but you also need to budget, time and attention to this. And again, not leave it as sort of an afterthought, like, oh, okay, what are we going to do with the front flower bed, right when we're done before we're listing. So the front door, I think that's the easiest. Everybody knows if you want to add some curb appeal, paint the front door. You need to budget 100 to 800 for this. So the minimum is going to be painting it. On choosing paint colors, first rule, do not let the contractor pick. Occasionally contractors have good sense of style, but usually they don't. So you need to be very specific on the color and you need to choose it. If you are not very good at color and you're not very good at interior design and things, sure, somebody who is. And people who are good at that love to talk about it and tell you what to do. So just, I actually do that with all of my properties. I'll try out a few different colors, take pictures, send them to my friends, like which one do you like the best, kind of crowdsource it. So get some help and do the front door really well. The $800 would be more if you have to replace like the entire door and frame. That would be like if you're buying a really rundown home. Most of the time, you're talking paint and a door handle, and replace the door handle too, because so many times I'll show a flip and it's like everything else is beautiful, and then it's like this terrible old handle that won't open and it looks awful. And I'm like, door handles are like $30, like go get a new door handle, because that's the first thing that the potential buyer is going to experience on this home. So it's really important. And then the garage door. So this is a house that we bought several years ago, and it doesn't really show in this picture very well, but the door and the garage door were very pink. It was awful. It was really terrible. And so the first thing we did with this renovation, this was a live-in flip. The first thing we did was paint the garage door and the front door. You can see it really made a big difference. And I did have neighbors just stop me all the time, like, thank you for painting that awful pink door. So the garage door, if you can get away with maybe just pressure washing it, I've done that too. If you've got trees nearby, they might have put pollen and things on. If you just give it a good wash, paint it is not going to be that expensive, especially if you're already doing other painting in the house. Worst case scenario, replace the door. That's why I put $1,000. So if you have to replace the door and the tracks and everything, it can get up to about $1,000, but that would be like worst case scenario. And then the opener, depending on the neighborhood, I would say anybody renting above 1,400 or so is expecting that there's a garage door opener. So you want to make sure that you either have one or repair what's there. Grass. So in Texas, this is really hard because it's so dry here. But the grass is something you can fix it in a picture. Your photographer can just make it look green in your photos. But when people get there, they're going to see if it's a dead, awful lawn. So, like I said, clean up everything first when you're renovating. Something I learned the hard way, have somebody mow every 3 weeks during renovations. So I had a house that took me way too long to renovate, and the backyard I just didn't. I was like, I can't even, I'm just trying to get this house done. I can't even think about this yard. And it got bad, and it cost me several $100s to get it fixed. And so if I'd had somebody just come mow every 3 weeks, then that would have been prevented. So, have somebody just kind of, maybe even your contractor will, just to kind of keep things down, especially if it's in an HOA, keep everybody happy. I've also planted grass seed at the beginning of renovations if there are big spots. That way, it's got the months while you're renovating to maybe start growing. Grass seed is really cheap. So that would be the cheapest way to help your grass. If you're renting the home, a lot of times people ask me this. If they're renting a home and the lawn is, they'll say, I would hate this lawn, like it's not a very nice lawn. And my answer is, like, I've shown so many rental houses, and I've never had a tenant client say that they've rejected a house because of the yard, possibly because of the lack of a yard altogether or something, maybe the size of the yard. But nobody's ever said, like, oh, the grass is ugly here, or that bush is terrible, or that fence is bad. Well, sometimes the fence if it's really bad, but the grass doesn't need to be perfect for a rental, but it does need to be cut. And when you do showings, it does need to be cut at least every 2 weeks during showings. That's probably only going to be one time here because our days on market are so low for rentals, but just have it, have it trimmed and have it nice, because especially with military tenants, they really want, just a clean house. Doesn't have to be fancy, but just clean. And that includes the grass. So paths, sidewalks, and driveways. With all of the clay soil here, the sidewalks can become sideways pretty easily. And so this can be kind of wonky. So at the minimum, you're probably going to be pressure washing. Like we will have, you don't want your black sidewalks in the pictures or when the tenants show up. So just give them a good pressure wash. And then medium level would be, filling in the cracks. They make a product that expands to fill up the cracks just to kind of keep it to look better and keep water from continuing to get in there. You can re-level some if it's a minor thing, you can have, I mean, even like a lawn guy can sometimes just re-level it, like dig out under it, put some sand in. And then you'll see this is a picture of my husband, one of our flips that we did. It had this sidewalk that was just like this against the house. I mean, it was totally like at a 45-degree angle to the house. And we got to the end of the project and we were like, man, we just don't have the money to like fix that sidewalk. And so he just rented a jackhammer and we took it out. And I just put a garden bed there and some stepping stones. We took out this bush by the wheelbarrow and just put stepping stones across the way. So that was a really cheap way to fix a really big problem we had. And in some cases, if you're buying a house that the driveway is just awful, you may have to completely redo it. That's rare, I'd say, but it's possible. So, okay, and then landscaping. If you're selling, your own house, you're putting your house on the market, or you're a landlord getting ready to rent your house out, I wouldn't do any like real specific landscaping. I wouldn't do any big landscaping projects. I would just work with whatever you have, trim the bushes, make sure the flowers look pretty, just make everything look as nice as it possibly can to get it ready for showings. And then, but flippers, again, that appraiser made all of these comments, like these other, there's no landscaping here at all. There's no work on the exterior. And so you want to make it look inviting at the very least, plant some flowers, put some color, again, not too fancy there because people can be actually intimidated if there's too much of a garden to upkeep. I've shown houses that had beautiful gardens and had my clients say like, there's no way, I don't like to garden. I'm not going to take care of that. So you don't want to do that either. So just make it look nice, make it look appealing for as cheap as you possibly can. And you can, I mean, landscaping, I guess it can get expensive if you're doing like retaining walls and things, but if you're just putting in bushes and flowers, it should be pretty reasonable. And I may do my second life is gardening. So I may do something on landscaping separately, not in these meetings, but like a separate video about it. And then the home exterior, if you can get away, if it's like a brick or stone wall, you can see there, if it's black at the bottom, and it typically is if it hasn't been cared for, we just did a pressure wash. That's it. I mean, I think my husband was there pressure washing for like an hour. And then the siding, though, the siding on the before picture in San Antonio, we have a lot of these, a lot of houses that have this siding that is basically cardboard on the inside. I don't understand why we use it as siding. It's awful. And if any water gets inside it at all, it just completely disintegrates. And you can kind of see that on this picture and the before picture at the bottom. You can see where the siding was starting to come apart. And it can be fixed. There are some pretty cheap ways you can fix it. It typically happens along the bottom as rain splashes up into the siding. And so you can just cut the bottom section and install like wood and put caulk and kind of make that a waterproof bottom. You're also going to have the seams between the pieces are going to start to pop open, and you're going to be caulking those constantly and repainting. So we just decided on this house to just put new siding on, just so we didn't have to do it again in a few years. That's not always an option, or that's not always going to be practical, but you definitely, if the siding looks horrible, even in a rental, because if it looks bad when they're walking up to the house, they're going to assume that you didn't take care of the house and there's going to be other problems. And even though renters aren't responsible for those problems, they don't want to have them. They want to live in a house that's functional. So that, it's just a big red flag if you have bad siding, bad exterior. And then kind of final touches, cleaning the windows is really helpful. If they're really old and they have screens that are all torn up, you can just remove those. If they're in really bad shape, they're kind of expensive to replace. So I usually just take them off and clean the windows really good, especially if it's a flip, like then it will look nice, let more light in, and then replace. And if there's caulking around the edges of the window that's cracked or missing, you want to go ahead and do that, especially if you're flipping or selling, because the inspector is going to ding you for that anyway. And it's really inexpensive to do. And then staging outside, I always put a colorful doormat and like a little flower pot. If there's some feature of the home, if it's got like a covered porch, staging it, putting a table and chairs for the photos, like just these little touches, they make people remember the home, because remember that when people are looking to buy or rent, they're narrowing it down from hundreds of houses to one. And so making yours stand out by just taking the time to look a little bit nicer will really go a long way. And so even for my rentals, I put the flower pot, I put the towels in the bathroom. I try to make the listing photos look just like I would if I were flipping it. And so just pay attention to all of the little things. So I tried to put the budget on each slide just so you can have an idea. They're pretty big ranges because the houses, are in all different conditions. But I think a minimum budget for landscaping and curb appeal should be $500. We can argue about that later, but I would always put at least $500, if not more, to make sure that you're really going to appeal. You're going to spend thousands of dollars on this renovation, and then a $30 doorknob is going to be like what turns somebody off. So it's just kind of silly. Just do it right, focus on it, and get your house sold or rented faster.